welcome to Recap King. In this video, we will explain Kung Fu Jungle. This movie tells the story of a martial arts instructor who gets imprisoned after killing a man by accident. But when a vicious killer starts targeting martial arts masters, the instructor offers to help the police in return for his freedom. Can the martial arts instructor catch the criminal with the police? Let's find out in Kung Fu Jungle. Kung Fu Jungle begins with the story of a martial arts expert named Ha Ho Mo, who surrenders to the police station after he kills his opponent in a fight. Even though his mistake was unintentional, Ha Ho was still thrown into prison. 3 years later, a female police inspector, named Look Yun Sum, takes on the case of an overpass accident that killed a truck driver. Inspector Look's subordinates explain that there were 2 packages of drugs in the truck. Then Inspector Look starts to check the crime scene and finds a gun lying beside the truck. The thing that confused Inspector Look during her examination by the forensic team was that the truck driver died not because of an accident, but because of bruises all over his body. From the forensic doctor's statement that the bruises came from bare hands. Back to Ha Ho, who is serving his sentence in prison. While he was helping his friend who felt his hand hurt, a group of inmates came into the room and chased them away. Then, when Ha Ho was watching the TV broadcast, he saw the news that showed a truck accident. Ha Ho was shocked when he heard the name of the truck driver who died. He rushed to ask permission to call his wife. Unfortunately, prison officials did not allow Ha Ho and told him to return to his cell. Not at his wit's end, Ha Ho went to another officer and asked for permission to meet with Inspector Look. Again, Ha Ho's request was rejected because the prison officer found it strange that Ha Ho wanted to meet with Inspector Look. Ha Ho then made a commotion in the prison. He began to attack a group of inmates who had chased him away. One by one the prisoners he subdued. The commotion made the prison officers come to intervene. Ha Ho was arrested by prison officials for questioning. Here, Ha Ho reiterates his desire to meet with Inspector Look. A few days later, Inspector Look came to Ha Ho in prison, where Ha Ho then explained about the identity of the truck driver who died in the accident the other day. The truck driver, said Ha Ho, was a former professional boxer, and anyone who managed to attack the boxer was definitely not a reckless person. Moreover, the killer was able to take the truck driver's life with his bare hands, indicating that the killer had very high martial arts skills. Therefore, Ha Ho is willing to help Inspector Look solve the case she is facing, on the condition that Inspector Look must release him after the case is over. Unfortunately, Inspector Look refused Ha Ho's request. In a museum, a man named Tom King Yu is busy sculpting a giant skull statue. In the past, Tom was the best Kung Fu expert who had a special technique using deadly kicks. Now, Tom has quit as a Kung Fu practitioner and is pursuing his work as an artist. However, while he is at work, a man named Fung challenges him to a fight to prove who is the strongest among them. Tom told Fung to leave and forbade him to step on the skull head he had finished carving. Instead of obeying, Fung stepped on the skull's head. Overcome by anger, Tom accepts Fung's challenge. However, Fung's fast movement overwhelmed Tom. In the end, Fung was able to win the fight by kicking Tom in the chest as he lay helpless. Tom was killed in the midst of his work in the museum. Fung's ambition to kill all the Kung Fu masters in his country is now almost achieved, because he has killed 2 of the best martial arts experts, where the first is the truck driver, and second is Tom. After this, he would hunt down other Kung Fu masters. The next day, Inspector Look gets a report about Tom's murder. Inspector Look knows that Tom's murder case is related to the truck driver's murder. She then went to the prison to ask Ha Ho to help her solve the case. One morning, Ha Ho is seen coming out of prison and meets Inspector Look, who then asks where the killer is now and who his next target will be. Elsewhere, Wang Chit, a grocery store owner, is approached by Fung. Wang Chit is a Kung Fu expert who mastered body locking techniques. The fight between Fung and Wang Chit ensued. Both have almost equal strength and Kung Fu abilities. However, Fung manages to get over the situation and throws Wang out of the apartment. Wang died horribly after his body landed in one of the concrete constructions next to his apartment. Not long after, Ha Ho and Inspector Look came to the scene of the crime. Their arrival was a little late because Wang had died. However, the killer left an iron engraving with a picture of a swallow, as a sign that the victim had been killed by Fung. They then examined Wang's battered body, and it was at this time that Ha Ho saw a man watching them from across the building. That man is Fung. Ha Ho reflexively ran after him, but unfortunately, Ha Ho didn't manage to catch him. Sometime later, Ha Ho returned home to meet his wife, Xin Ying. At his home, Ha Ho founded a Kung Fu school with quite a number of students. And there, he found a souvenir, an engraving of a swallow similar to the one Fung had left after killing his victims. Ha Ho wondered how it got to his house. Xin then explained that a few months ago, a man she didn't know came to their house to look for Ha Ho. Not finding Ha Ho, the man left the engraving to give it to Ha Ho one day. Sin mentioned the characteristics of the man, who was about 30 years old and had a limp leg. Ha Ho was curious about the meaning of that thing and intended to find out. Sin then suggested that they go to someone who understands the history of Kung Fu in the country. One afternoon, Ha Ho and Sin visit To Folk Ming, a person who understands martial arts symbols. According to Ming, the carving of the wallet bird was named Eve Swallow. In the past, Kung Fu masters competed in Beijing. Those who lose receive the Eve Swallow. Ming asked Ha Ho why he was interested in the engraving. Ha Ho then explains that a serial killer leaves the same engraving as the Eve Swallow after killing his victims. This killer is disabled with a crippled leg. However, Ming could not provide further information that led to the serial killer. Just as Ha Ho and Sin were about to leave, Ming's friend who had heard their conversation called the two of them. He explained that he seemed to know the serial killer in question. 6 years ago, a man with an unusual name came to challenge him. The man's name was Fung Yusao. Fung lives with his wife in a place called Sui Kwai Lane. Hearing this information, Ha Ho immediately contacted Inspector Look to meet him at Sui Kwai Lane. They arrived at Fung's residence. However, when Inspector Look and her men inspect the place, it turns out that Fung and his wife have long been gone. The owner of the house explained that Fung's wife had cancer in the past. However, Fung was busy practicing Kung Fu every day without ever taking care of his wife. The owner of the house also informed that Fung and his wife left the house because they had to take care of their work in Hong Kong. While Inspector Look was still interrogating the owner of the house, one of her subordinates came to provide information that Fung was currently in Hong Kong. Inspector Look also received information that Fung had been admitted to a mental hospital 6 years ago. Fung himself is currently in a production filming, where he was expelled for interfering with activities. Annoyed, he picks up a sword and stabs one of the film's crew, saying he's looking for a man named Hung Yip. Hung is a swordsman who turned film actor. Frankly, Fung challenges Hung in front of many film crews who see their feud, just to prove who is the greatest. Hung accepts Fung's challenge. At the start of the fight, Hung can injure Fung with his sword. However, Fung managed to master the fight until he killed Hung using a small knife. Sometime later, one of Inspector Look's men receives a phone call from a mysterious person who wants to talk to Ha Ho. The mysterious man turned out to be Fung, who was about to challenge Ha Ho to a fight. The phone was immediately connected to the tracking device. After the police managed to locate the point where Fung made the phone call, Inspector Look asked her men to immediately arrest Fung. Unfortunately, by the time police forces surrounded the site, Fung had managed to escape. Inspector Look holds an important meeting with all her men to discuss the case of Fung's arrest. One of her men reported his findings that Fung's real name was Yung Hoi Song. Fung is also often seen in and out of Hong Kong. According to his legacy, Fung's grandmother owned a house in Taio Village. Most likely, Fung was currently hiding there. Hearing this, Inspector Look immediately went to Taio Village to spy on Fung. They then closed the area with a radius of 1 kilometer and installed surveillance cameras at strategic angles. If Fung is seen visiting his grandmother's house, the police will immediately ambush. Looks like Inspector Look's plan worked. From surveillance cameras, the police saw the appearance of Fung, who was heading to his grandmother's house through the river using a wooden boat. Seeing the appearance of Fung, the police immediately alerted. However, Fung apparently realized that he had been scouted. He immediately turned the boat and pulled over to the side of the river. From the surveillance camera, Fung's boat looked empty. Seeing this, Inspector Look started to panic. She then ordered the inspection team in Taio Village to find Fung alive or dead. Suddenly, the phone rang. Police headquarters asks Inspector Look to arrest Ha Ho. CCTV camera footage proves that Fung visited Ha Ho in prison. The police chief suspects that Ha Ho and Fung are friends, and that all of Fung's crimes were the result of their conspiracy. Inspector Look immediately asked her men to arrest Ha Ho, who was at the police station. But, before they could catch him, Ha Ho snatched the gun that was pointed at him, then fled from there to go see his wife Sin. Meanwhile, Fung had already arrived at Ha Ho's house and met with Sin. Sin did not remain silent. She tried to advise Fung to stop killing people. However, Fung was not a man who would listen to advice. He was a man who wouldn't hesitate to attack innocent people, and that's what he did. Not long after, Ha Ho reached his house, where he found Sin lying on the floor and badly injured. Meanwhile, Fung himself was seen trying to run away from the police. After several times immobilizing the police who confronted him, Fung managed to reach his boat on the riverbank. He fled, but the police continued to chase and shoot him from behind. Feeling cornered, Fung suddenly turned the boat around. He intended to hit the boat that his pursuers were riding. Luckily, the police who were on the boat managed to jump to save themselves. Now Sin has been taken by ambulance for treatment. Meanwhile, from a distance, Ha-ho calls Inspector Look and tells him why Fung visited him when he was still in prison a few months ago. Fung came to challenge Ha-ho to a fight. He even threatened to kill Sin if Ha-ho refused his challenge. Therefore, Ha-ho asks Inspector Look to protect Sin while he takes on Fung's challenge. A few weeks later, Fung is seen at a port, where he is about to challenge a Kung Fu master who mastered internal power techniques. The Kung Fu expert himself is working as a container truck driver. When Fung reached the side of the truck, Ha-ho got down and immediately challenged him, while the container truck driver called Inspector Look. Ha-ho and Fung fought in the middle of the highway. At first, Ha-ho had a hard time dealing with Fung's attacks, until finally he managed to kick Fung, almost getting his opponent hit by a truck. However, Ha-ho pulled on Fung's body to save him. After that, they continued the fight, and this time, Ha-ho hit Fung relentlessly. In the end, Fung begged for forgiveness so that Ha-ho would stop attacking him. However, it turns out that it was just Fung's ruse, because after that, he woke up and tried to attack Ha-ho again. Unfortunately, they were both hit by a truck that was passing at high speed. Ha-ho was blown to the side of the road. Lying in a semi-conscious state, he saw Fung nearby. Fung recognized Ha-ho as his strongest enemy. Then, Fung took out a small knife to kill Ha-ho. However, at this moment, Inspector Look appears pointing her gun at Fung. Inspector Look asks Fung to turn himself in. Instead of giving up, Fung turned around to attack Inspector Look. With several shots, Inspector Look finally managed to kill the serial killer that had been troubling the public. 3 months later, Ha-ho is seen in prison and is highly respected by the other inmates. Sometime later, he is visited by Inspector Look, who informs him that Ha-ho is free. In the end, Ha-ho is seen taking pictures with Sin and their baby boy, as well as all the students at his martial arts college. The film ends. The message of this film is, stay away from crazy people who will cause trouble. It is very difficult to beat someone who does not have common sense, and does not respect the right to life for everyone. From Fung's character, we can see that his ambition to be number one has darkened his heart so that he has no empathy for others.